Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our Northern Ireland Hustings. This is the 8th Hustings on our nationwide tour, and it's good to be here today. And now we've visited every constituent part of our United Kingdom. I first want to start by thanking the production team from CCHQ. We wrapped up in Perth last night about 9:30, and seamlessly they've appeared today and the stage is set up. So please put your hands together and thank you. Thank you to all of you for attending. These hustings are for us, the members of the Conservative Party, to take part in a great exercise of democracy where we get to choose our new party leader. She or he will be announced on the 5th of September, and as with the party of government, will become Prime Minister very soon afterwards. As Ian Dale, who moderated the hustings in 2019, said, "I found chairing the hustings a surprisingly positive experience. The members really put the two candidates through their paces and asked some very searching questions. So I ask you today to make your questions searching, to make them succinct, and to ask questions and not to make statements. And one question each, please, so that more of the audience have an opportunity to grill our candidates." Both of our candidates have a duty and a desire to fulfill our 2019 manifesto. Their differences will be how to go about that in a very different world from 2019. Post-Brexit, post-COVID, in uncertain times internationally. Look at Ukraine and Taiwan. And whereas you know here, our union as a nation is being challenged. So I'm sure you'll want to test our candidates, to seek to establish their strengths and to see who you think is capable of running our great country. As we're all Conservatives here, I know that you'll all be respectful of our two candidates and keep your questions positive. There are just over 2 weeks left to vote. If you haven't already voted, then you can cast your vote online or by post. It's very easy to vote online, or you can choose traditional snail mail. And if you do post, then please remember to put a stamp on your envelope. And please note that there are planned postal strikes towards the end of this month, so it's actually easier to vote online and safer. I hope that all of you will go away enthused and energized in your commitment to helping our party win the next election. We need your help and support. And finally, I'd like to remind everyone that at the end of our democratic process, we must come together as a party. We have many new members who should be contacted and made welcome. We have members returning to the fold, and we must make use of their talents. Ours has to be a combined effort under our new leader to go forward to victory at the next election. All of our 50 shades of blue who make up our party must come together to defeat Labour, the Liberal Democrats and the Nationalists, with a team spirit to defend our union. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's get on with the show.
Well, thank you, Peter. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a real pleasure to be back in Northern Ireland as chairman of the Conservative Party. I say back in Northern Ireland because I have close family ties here. My mother-in-law lives just down the road in Bangor. So it's a real pleasure to be back and to see so many faces, so many members of our party here today to hear from the two candidates. Before I invite our first candidate on the stage to give her opening statement, can I just see a show of hands to make sure that everybody here who is an eligible voting member has received their ballot paper? Great. And can I also see a show of hands for how many people are still yet to vote? Amazing. Excellent. So there are a lot of eligible members here still waiting to vote, still hopefully waiting to be convinced by our two fantastic candidates. The way this will be working, as has just been set out by Peter, we will invite the first candidate on the stage to make their opening statement. It will be Liz Truss going first. She will make an opening statement, and then I will come back on stage and invite questions from the floor. If you want to ask a question, we'll go straight into questions after the opening statement. If you raise your hand clearly so I can see you, I will then signal to one of the people wearing the very fashionable white hoodies to come over to you with a microphone. At the start of the question, if you can say who you are and where you're from, and then if you can ask your question. If you can keep your question brief, that would be very much appreciated. The briefer the questions, the more of you will get an opportunity to ask a question. So with no further ado, will you please give a warm welcome to the first candidate, Liz Truss.
Hi everybody, it's fantastic to be here in Northern Ireland. I was brought up in Paisley in Scotland, in Leeds in Yorkshire. So I guess you could say I'm a child of the Union. And I believe that our union is one of the key assets we have as a country. We're not just neighbours, we're family. And I want our family to stay together and never ever to split up. And Northern Ireland is a key part of our fantastic union. And ever since I've been a minister in this government, I've worked on behalf of the people. I've promoted our fantastic farm products here from Northern Ireland around the world, and as Trade Secretary, struck dozens of new trade deals to benefit the businesses and consumers here in Northern Ireland. And since becoming Foreign Secretary, I have taken on the issue of the Northern Ireland Protocol and seek to resolve the issues that we face. Because the fact is that the protocol is undermining the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. It is causing unfairness between the communities in Northern Ireland, and we need to make sure it is fixed for the future of this great part of the United Kingdom. We need to sort out the laws. The UK needs to be the ultimate arbiter. The UK courts need to be the ultimate arbiter. We need to sort out the bureaucracy across the Irish Sea so that we can see goods flowing freely from Great Britain to Northern Ireland, and that's why I put forward the solution of the green and the red lanes. We also need to sort out regulation, and we need to make sure that the people of Northern Ireland can benefit from the same tax breaks as the people of Great Britain. Now, I worked hard to get a resolution with the EU on this issue. It wasn't forthcoming, but I'm not somebody who's prepared to let the situation drift. That's why I developed the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill. I pushed it through Whitehall. We got it through the House of Commons, and I am absolutely determined to deliver it in full and make sure it's put into place, because this is vital for the future of Northern Ireland and the future of the United Kingdom. I'm also determined to make sure we address the issues of legacy too. We need to make sure that every part of our great country thrives. And that's about making sure people have opportunities, regardless of their background, regardless of which part of the United Kingdom they're from. We need to become an aspiration nation. But the fact is, we do face difficult economic challenges. We do face a global energy crisis. And that is why we can't have business as usual. That is why we need to be bold. See, what I will do is I will unlock the opportunities of Brexit. I will make sure that we have free ports here in Northern Ireland. I will make sure that we have more trade deals, and I will make sure all of the EU laws are off our statute books by the end of 2023. I'll also lower taxes. We shouldn't have put up national insurance. We said we wouldn't in our manifesto, and I will have a temporary moratorium on the green energy levy to make sure that customers' bills are lower. And as for corporation tax, we shouldn't be putting it up to the same level as France and to higher, 10 points higher than the Republic of Ireland, because that will make it harder to secure the investment that we need to into our country. So I will keep corporation tax low, because I believe as a Conservative that we are about working, rewarding people who do the right thing, people who work hard, people who set up their own businesses, people who are self-employed. Those are the people whose side we should be on. We, of course, need to continue to stand up to Vladimir Putin. I'm proud that we were the first country in Europe to send weapons to Ukraine. And some of those weapons were produced here in Northern Ireland, the famous NLAWs. But we also need to make sure that we are looking after our defence and security, because Europe is more insecure. That's why I would increase defence spending to 3% of GDP over the coming decade. And as Foreign Secretary, I put the toughest sanctions on Russia of any country in the world. We also need to make sure we're protecting our country from illegal immigration. That's why I would legislate to make sure that the ECHR cannot overrule decisions made democratically here in the United Kingdom. And we need to protect freedom and democracy here in the United Kingdom as well as overseas. There's been too much identity politics, too much talking our country down. I'm very clear, a woman is a woman. And I will make sure we protect our single-sex spaces, our domestic violence shelters, and we protect women's rights. But most of all, I will make sure we protect our precious United Kingdom. I've shown I can deliver as Trade Secretary, as Foreign Secretary, and I now want to deliver for the United Kingdom, and I want to deliver with the Northern Ireland Conservatives. I will make sure they are an integral part of our campaign. They're an integral part of the work that we do as government, so that we are unlocking potential and opportunity right across the United Kingdom, here in Northern Ireland, so we can go on and we can win the general election in 2024. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Wonderful. If I can see a show of hands of who wants to go with the first question, and I'm going to start right at the back. So centre aisle, there's a gentleman in a blue shirt there. If we can send the microphone to him. There we go, sir. Yes.
Good afternoon. Terry Medill from South Antrim Conservative Association. I note in your speech that you didn't mention the stalemate in Stormont. I'd like to ask you, if you are elected Prime Minister, what will you do to restore a democratic government in this part of the world that is not held hostage over this, that or the other, please?
Well, this is exactly what I have been working on with we are not going to get Stormont back up and running. And I've been in discussions with all of the parties in Northern Ireland. I'm determined to make it happen. And as we make progress on the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill, we will see power sharing re-established in Northern Ireland, and as well, the Belfast Good Friday Agreement re-established.
Thank you. And then if we go to another gentleman, central aisle, you, sir, yes. The microphone's just coming to you now.
Hi, thank you for coming to Northern Ireland. You're very welcome here. I'm Irvin Armstrong, past chair of the Conservative Party in Northern Ireland, and I've been a member of the party for over a quarter of a century, and there are others in the audience today who've been here longer than I have. And we've all worked to promote cross-community politics that believes in the union, and as the only party that organises in all of the union, I think we haven't had the support in Northern Ireland that we have deserved. It has been intermittent. There have been deals with the EUP, deals with the UUP. What commitment will you give to support, both with people and financially, the party to allow it to properly develop in future?
Well, I think you are absolutely right that the Conservative Party of Northern Ireland hasn't received the support that it should have done over the years. And what I'm committed to is making sure the Conservative Party of Northern Ireland are a key part of my team, that they get the resources they need to attract new members, and it's great news that we are seeing more members join the Conservative Party, but also that we're putting more candidates up for election here in Northern Ireland, because we are the Conservative and Unionist Party. We believe in the union, and we need to put I am somebody who has visited Northern Ireland a lot. I have visited Scotland a lot. I have visited Wales a lot. I'm very, very committed to delivering for the whole United Kingdom, and I believe in it, and I will work with you to really make things happen for the Conservative Party here in Northern Ireland.
Great. There was another gentleman in the centre aisle here. Just wait for 10 seconds. There you go.
Glenn Chambers from East Belfast. It doesn't seem that likely to me, but if the EU did come back with some sort of compromise on the protocol that was nonetheless well short of the protocol bill, would you accept that? And secondly, are we going to have to wait a year for the protocol bill to actually become law as it goes through the House of Lords?
So I will not accept anything that doesn't deliver on the key issues I talked about. So making sure that UK courts are the ultimate arbiter, making sure that we have free-flowing east-west trade, making sure that the people of Northern Ireland can benefit from the tax benefits delivered by the government, the UK government, but also sorting out the regulatory system so businesses can operate according to UK law or EU law, depending on where the export market is. And that was what I set out to Maros Sefcovic at the beginning of the year. I was very clear that that is what was needed to restore the balance of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement and to get the institutions in Northern Ireland back up and running. So I won't accept anything less than that. You know, it might take time to get this bill through the House of Lords, but the sooner we start, the sooner we'll finish, and I'm determined to get it done as quickly as possible. And what I expect is the House of Lords will see the fact that this bill has got a strong mandate from the House of Commons, and they will understand that this is a priority for the government to deliver.
Great. I'll go to the gentleman over there.
Roger Gilpin from Belfast. We've seen over a number of years bold comments about the union. And when we get a Secretary of State or a Prime Minister coming in, they automatically end up in the NIO and kowtow to running us like a colonial outpost. Latterly, we've been actually bowing to the wishes of nationalism and are now being bossed about by international bodies in the EU, the Republic of Ireland and America. If you're elected leader, what commitment can you give to us that can be demonstrable after you're elected that you will not kowtow and that you will lay down Conservative and Unionist politics in Northern Ireland?
Well, I ask you to judge me on my record. I took on responsibility for negotiating the Northern Ireland Protocol, and against a lot of advice in Whitehall, and against the wishes of some of the people that you've mentioned. And I would be very clear with people like Nancy Pelosi exactly what I think about this and exactly what we need to do. I have got on with delivering this. People said it wouldn't be possible. People said we wouldn't be able to get a mandate in the House of Commons. We got that mandate. And this bill is absolutely legal because we need to do it in order to restore the primacy of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. On every single challenge I have faced in government, whether it is getting the trade deals done, whether it's the Northern Ireland Protocol, whether it's changing the sanctions regime, I'm not somebody who has gone backwards or taken no for an answer. I'm somebody who's got on and delivered it, and I've delivered on every single promise I've made.
Wonderful. There is a lady over there with a hand up at the moment. If we can get a microphone to her, please.
Thank you. Northern Ireland has a long history of shipbuilding and has built many warships. Current defence spend is £30 per person per capita in Northern Ireland. This compares with 360 per person per capita in Scotland and much more in England. Will you commit to levelling up defence spend in Northern Ireland and support the revitalisation of shipbuilding here in Belfast?
Well, we have a fantastic shipbuilding tradition and a great tradition here in Northern Ireland. And of course, part of what we need to do is increase the defence budget, which I am committed to, but we also need to deliver levelling up. And levelling up for me is also about making sure that Northern Ireland gets the opportunities it deserves. So I talked earlier about free ports, and it's been too slow, frankly, to deliver a free port in Northern Ireland. I'm committed to doing that. I'm committed to giving Northern Ireland those tax benefits so we can see more opportunities, more jobs, including in the shipbuilding industry.
Great. There's a gentleman, I think he's got maybe a yellow handkerchief in his hand, if we can get a microphone. To you, sir.
Roger Lomas from West Tyrone. If you're Prime Minister, it'll be your choice as to who the next Secretary of State is. Will that Secretary of State, like the Secretary of States for Scotland and Wales, be committed to here in the sense of will they be accountable to the electorate, or are you just going to give us another fly-in, fly-out, absentee political landlord?
Well, look, I don't want to be premature. We're still in the middle of this leadership race. And what I can assure you about everybody I would appoint in the Cabinet is it will be based on how good they are at doing the job and whether they get things done. And we've been talking today about the important things we've got to deliver in Northern Ireland. We've got to deliver the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill. We've got to deliver the free port. We've got to deliver those investment opportunities in Northern Ireland. And that is ultimately what people in Northern Ireland care about, and why people will vote Conservative in Northern Ireland is for those reasons. So what I can tell you is I will make sure the person in that job is the absolute best at delivering for the people of Northern Ireland.
Great. There's a gentleman at the back. There's three of you together. Gentleman with a watch on your hand, yourself, if you stand up and the microphone's coming to you.
Many people are now returning to cash to balance their household budget, yet many businesses will actually refuse to accept cash. What could you do to assist those people who prefer to use cash?
Well, you are right, and it seems to me some businesses will only accept cash and some businesses will only accept cards, and that's but we should make sure that people are able to use cash where they don't have alternatives. I think that is important, and it's a fair point.
Great. Is there anyone on the sides? No. Can we go for the gentleman here in the red top? Microphone's coming to you, sir.
Hi, Liz. I'm George. I live in South Antrim, and I used to lead Conservatives abroad in South Korea. So it's great to have you over. So in 2019, Westminster undemocratically and unconstitutionally imposed abortion on Northern Ireland, something which the vast majority of the people here are against. So my question is, will you, if Prime Minister, be a modern-day William Wilberforce and see abortion abolished and infanticide ended in our province? Or even if not that, will you just let the people of Northern Ireland have their say on this issue? Thank you.
Well, I'm afraid I don't agree with you. I think we need, we are a united kingdom. We are a united kingdom, and we need all of our laws to apply right across the United Kingdom. That is what being a union is.
There's a lady on the front row here. Can you get the microphone down? Sorry.
Felicity Houston from East Belfast, and I've been in the party even longer than Erwin, so I must have been a very young YC when I joined, mustn't I? I'd like to ask about something slightly further afield in Northern Ireland and quite relevant to your current portfolio. You talked about how you've taken such a robust stance against Putin and led Europe, and I think strengthened the resolve of much of Europe to stand up to him. But the next fear I think we all have is China and Taiwan. And the difference I feel between China and Russia is that we are totally enmeshed with them. Could we have sanctions against China as we did have against Russia? You know, would we even be brave enough to ban TikTok? What are we going to do if the Chinese move into Taiwan?
So, China is becoming increasingly assertive. You know, China is an authoritarian regime. It is a very deep security concern for the UK and the rest of the world. But what we need to do is we need to work with our partners like the Japanese and the Americans, because there is strength in numbers. If you look at the G7, it represents 50% of GDP. What I've done, and I did this in Liverpool where we had our G7 meeting last year, is encouraged our counterparts to work together. So we should look at making sure we're not exporting technology that could be used against us. We need clear investment screening, and we've developed that to make sure that we can't have acquisitions of key strategic assets. And we need to be clear that we should not become strategically dependent on China in the way that Europe became on Russia, and they've used it as leverage against Europe in terms of things like turning off the gas. What we're also doing is working with our G7 counterparts on our alternative to the Belt and Road Initiative. Because at the moment, what China is doing is it's investing in developing countries, it's creating debt, and it's using that to try and have greater global influence. So we need to work together with freedom-loving democracies to counter that and to make sure we're investing into those countries, but that also we're not becoming strategically dependent on China.
There's a gentleman here in a fabulous jacket.
Hello, sorry, Conor Aston. I'm just wondering how you could potentially fix the benefit system. If we take a single parent working, it gets to the stage now as a small business owner that people can't afford. If they work more than 16 hours a week, they start to affect their benefits, and they then can't afford to do that. As a small business owner, it makes it much more difficult for us to recruit people. So how could you see to reward people to work rather than to not work?
Well, you make a very good point, and there's a large number of people now across the United Kingdom who are economically inactive. And what we need to do is encourage those people into work. And we're also facing businesses that have a skills shortage at the same time. And it is about changing the incentives in the benefits system. And that is what I would seek to do over time to get more people into work, but also creating the jobs and the opportunities that people can work in. And that's why it's important that we keep taxes low, reverse the national insurance increase, so we help businesses thrive, but we're also helping people get those jobs by making the incentives in the benefits system much clearer.
Great. The gentleman here at the front, if we can get a microphone now, just bear with me. So it is coming round to you.
Jack Irwin, North Down. We have a huge deficit. Is reducing taxation the right way forward and not to service that debt?
So we have the highest levels of tax for 70 years. And it's my view that if you put taxes up too high, you actually get less revenue in, because businesses are less likely to invest, people are less likely to set up new companies, people are less likely to go into work if there aren't clear benefits to doing so. And I think we've got to the stage in our economy where taxes are too high and they're potentially choking off growth. Currently, we're projected to have a recession. And I don't need to tell you that if we have a recession, it's going to be harder to pay the deficit off. Now, of course, over time, we need to make sure the private sector is growing faster than the public sector, and we're bringing those revenues in. But it's my judgment that our taxes are too high, and they're actually stopping that economic activity that will help pay off our debt and pay off our deficit over time.
We'll come to the gentleman here. Microphone's coming to you, sir.
Hello, Alan Thompson, Carrickfergus. If elected, what measures would you take from day one to bring to an end the fiasco in the English Channel?
So, I fully support the Rwanda scheme, and I worked with Priti Patel on that. I want to expand that scheme to more countries. It is the right solution because what it ultimately means is there is somewhere that people can live and work in the long term, and it is a long-term sustainable solution. The problem we have is the ECHR trying to overrule the decisions made in Britain, and the way I would deal with that is immediately legislating to make sure that the ECHR can't overrule our domestic decisions.
Central aisle, this gentleman here with glasses on, if the microphone is coming to you, sir, bear with us.
Hi, I'm Jack from Belfast. Hi.
Hi.
You have supported a Prime Minister that has continually lied to the Queen, Parliament and the entire United Kingdom. Therefore, does this not bring into question your own personal integrity and honesty?
Well, I don't agree with that. Boris Johnson has been an excellent Prime Minister. He delivered on Brexit. He delivered on Brexit. He delivered on the COVID vaccine. And he delivered on standing up to Vladimir Putin and backing the Ukrainians. And I'm proud of what he did. And what we need to do now is we need to deliver on the promises we made in 2019 to people across the United Kingdom, and that is what I am determined to do.
Fantastic. Final question, we're going to go with the lady with the scarf on here, if the microphone can come down.
Liz, you're so welcome to Northern Ireland. We have a great country here, so much going for it. We just need to get it into the right hands. I'm just going to come back on you again about democracy returning to Northern Ireland. As my friend mentioned about the abortion issue, in 2019, it was the Northern Ireland Executive Formation Act that allowed the Secretary of State at the time to bring in this abortion law. Now, you mentioned that you would want things to be the same right across the UK, but it's not the same, Liz. We have an extremely severe abortion law here in Northern Ireland, one of the most extreme in the world. I'm a retired occupational therapist, and I'm very concerned that babies with clubfoot and hare lip both can have modern surgical procedures to correct that, are being aborted. Also that many babies with learning disability are being aborted, and we're deprived of people with learning disability in our community that can be so wonderful. Now, and there's another issue regarding sex education, so I'll have to shorten and come to the point. But what can you do to repeal Section 9 so that true democracy will be returned to Northern Ireland, and we can even link in with the UK on this, whereas at the case we're not at the same level?
Well, they're slightly different issues, because the issue of abortion is an issue of conscience for members of Parliament, and I do believe that should be decided at a UK level. I think that is the right approach. I mean, on the issue of sex education, that is a different issue that does need to apply specifically in Northern Ireland. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Can you please put your hands together for Liz Truss?
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And can I just reiterate the point about short questions? The shorter the questions, the more people we will get through. Will you please now get ready and give a warm welcome to our second candidate, Rishi Sunak.
Good afternoon, my fellow Britons. Thank you for having me. Now, look, I'm standing here in front of you today for one very simple reason, and it's because our country, our United Kingdom, did something extraordinary for my family. It welcomed them here as immigrants 60 years ago and allowed them to build a better life. Now, I was raised with a few simple values. Foremost among those is that family means everything to me. And that's because we all know that the bonds of family are far greater than anything any government could ever hope to replicate. Now, in my family, the thing that we prioritised above all was hard work as the way to forge ahead. My mum ran the local chemist in Southampton, where I grew up, and I spent my time working for her in the shop, out and about delivering medicines to local patients, but also doing her books, seeing the power of that small business to provide jobs and opportunity in our local community. Now, for my parents, there was one thing above all that they believed could provide a better future for their 3 children, and it was simple. It was through education. And that's why today I passionately believe that the best way that we reduce inequality, that we spread opportunity, that we transform people's lives, is by ensuring that the birthright of every child is a world-class education. And that, in a nutshell, are my values: patriotism, family, service, hard work. And I know that they will be your values too, and that's because they're Conservative values. And that's why I want to be your Prime Minister, to put those values into action to build a better Britain. But how are we going to do that? Well, we need to do 3 things. First, we must restore trust. We need to rebuild the economy, and we need to reunite our country. Now, when it comes to restoring trust, for me, that starts with honesty. And as you can see in this leadership race, I've not chosen to say the things that people may want to hear. I've said the things that our country, I believe, needs to hear. Now, even though that doesn't make my life easy, it is honest, and that is what leadership is all about. But we'll also restore trust by delivering on the things that matter to people. And that's why I want to stand up for our values and take on this lefty woke culture that seems to want to cancel our history, our values, and our women. It's why I want to make sure that we finally tackle illegal migration. Because I stand here as a product of our country's compassionate history in welcoming people. But it must be done fairly, it must be done legally. And when we see scenes on our TV screens of people coming here illegally, it undermines trust in the system. And with my plan, radical as it is, we will fix that problem and take back proper control of our borders. But we also need to restore trust right here in Northern Ireland. Because all you know that Northern Ireland's place in the United Kingdom is being threatened. Now, the Reverend McMullen had a wonderful anecdote about David Trimble at his funeral, where he talked about the night of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, how David forgot his PIN number for his card and couldn't buy some food when he went out shopping. But we also know that David never forgot the details when it came to negotiation. And as a proud Briton, Unionist and Ulsterman, the detail that he was most proud of when it came to the Belfast Good Friday Agreement was Strand 3, the East-West relationship, because he knew that that would be the counterbalance to what the nationalists were after, and he had enormous foresight in making sure that that was an integral part of the agreement, and you know as I know that that is under threat today. And I want to give you my commitment that I will do what it takes to fix the protocol and protect Northern Ireland's place in our United Kingdom. When it comes to rebuilding the economy, you don't need me to tell you what the problem is. We saw it today in the figures. It's inflation. And we've seen this story before. Inflation is the enemy. It makes everyone poorer. Eats into people's savings, their pensions. It pushes up mortgage rates. That's why this autumn and winter, as Prime Minister, I will make sure that we support especially the most vulnerable in our society with the means to help get through what will be a difficult time, because that's the compassionate Conservative thing to do. But what I will not do is pursue policies that risk making inflation far worse and lasting far longer, because that is not going to help anyone. And especially if those policies seem to amount to borrowing £50 billion and putting that on the country's credit card, then asking our kids and our grandkids to pick up the tab. Because for me, that's not right. It's not responsible, and it is certainly not Conservative. Now, but I am going to cut taxes. And in this Parliament, for the first time in 16 years with my plans, we will cut income tax. Because I want to demonstrate that under a Conservative government that I lead, hard work will always pay. But I'm going to do that responsibly, by being tough on public spending and by growing our economy. Which is why this autumn I want to radically change how we tax businesses. Cutting taxes for those businesses that are doing the right thing and investing and innovating, because that's how you drive growth and productivity in a modern economy. But I also want to support our fantastic industries here, because there is so much potential, not just in the small businesses that dominate Northern Ireland's economy, like my mum's, but also in the industries of the future, with hydrogen buses coming on the streets, with the Space Propulsion Centre, with Thales, with City here, with the financial services industry. I know how to turbocharge those industries. I was radical as Chancellor, I will be radical as Prime Minister, reforming our financial services regulation, making sure that we create the innovation economy of the future, spreading R&D across the UK, creating a new Freeport right here in Northern Ireland, a Brexit opportunity that I came up with. Now, I know with my business experience, I can lead not just Northern Ireland's economy, but the UK's economy into the future and seize those opportunities that are there waiting for us if we're prepared to be bold and radical about grasping them. Because in 2 years, we need to reunite our country at a general election, and we have to do something that has never been done before. We have to make British political history by winning a 5th general election in a row. Now, even though it hasn't been done, I am confident that working together, all of us, we can do it. But it's going to require us to appeal to swing voters everywhere. And we need to start right here, because it's right that the Conservative and Unionist Party puts resources and candidates in every part of our United Kingdom, because we want to win in every part of our United Kingdom. But in order to win that election, we will have to appeal to people everywhere, and I am passionate that I am the candidate that offers our party the best opportunity of securing that election victory and ensuring that Keir Starmer never walks through the doors of number 10 Downing Street. And in conclusion, I'll just say this. You saw me as Chancellor at the beginning of the pandemic acting boldly, radically to successfully safeguard our economy through the biggest storm it had experienced in 300 years. Now, as Prime Minister, I promise you that I will apply that same sense of urgency and grip to everything else that government does as we create a better Britain. A Britain where our children can walk safely on the streets at night. A Britain where the NHS is reformed and efficient and there for us when we need. A Britain where our schools and apprenticeships are the envy of the world in providing opportunity. And a Britain where our economy is the most dynamic it has ever been, with our businesses investing and innovating to create jobs in every part of our country. But I also promise you this, perhaps more importantly, that I will give you my all to ensure that each and every one of you here today can always feel enormously proud of the Conservative government that I will be privileged to lead. So I humbly ask for your support not just to be our next party leader, but also the next Prime Minister of our great United Kingdom. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rishi. Right, we're straight into questions. Once again, if you can raise your hands. There's a lady down here. We'll go for the lady on the end, first of all. If the microphone is coming down to you now.
Hi, Lynn Anderson, East Belfast. How exactly are you going to sort out the NHS issues? GPs working part-time, lack of GPs, intakes not managing to take over those leaving. I'm a former nurse and I've seen all the issues firsthand. On Sunday night, there were 2 emergency psychiatric beds, but they were mattresses on the floor. What are you going to do?
So, Lynn, the NHS is the country's #1 priority, and it's clearly under strain. And if we want to be a government that cuts taxes, and I desperately want to deliver tax cuts for you and everyone else in the country, we have to be prepared to be bold about the NHS. Because if we're not prepared to do things differently, the NHS will continue to swallow up every pound that every one of you here and everyone else has, right? And I think we as Conservatives need to try and change that dynamic. We need to reform and make the NHS more efficient so we can talk less about how much money we're always putting into it and more about the healthcare that we're getting out of it. So I'm prepared to be very, very radical about these things, and I'll give you just one example so you get a sense that I've been thinking about this. And that's to tackle an issue which has bedeviled us for years and we haven't done anything about, and that is the issue of missed NHS appointments. Now, last year, across the NHS, there were 15 million appointments that were missed, not just at GPs, but at hospitals too. And that's not right. It doesn't value our doctors and nurses. And worse, it deprives people of the care that they desperately and urgently need. So my plan is to get tough on people who are missing appointments. Because if we do that, it's not about making money from them. It's about changing behaviour in this country, so that's not acceptable. Because if people cancel those appointments in advance, we will free up an enormous amount of extra healthcare, which means people can get seen quicker. They won't be waiting. We'll get the backlogs down faster without a single one of you or anyone else having to pay a penny more in taxes. And yes, lots of people will say, oh, well, you can't be tough on people and there's always a good excuse, or how will you get the charging to work? But no, right? We've got to do things differently and take on these conventions. Because if we don't, if we're not prepared to be bold and radical about getting efficiency out the NHS, not only will we not get the health care that we need and deserve, we will never be able to cut taxes. And I want to do both of those things, so that's what I'm going to deliver for you as Prime Minister.
There's a lady just here.
Hi, Leslie McGarrity, North Down. I'm a social care provider of over 30 years standing, and I have never known it to be so difficult to deliver social care. There are 2 aspects to my question. The first one is in relation to benefits that prevent people from working or permit them not to work. And secondly, in relation to immigration costs for social care businesses. Presently, we are unable to retain staff, recruit staff who are currently on universal credit. We can't improve their terms and conditions because then it reduces their benefits. Would there be mileage, perhaps, in increasing the number of hours that people have to work in order to obtain universal credit? And secondly, I have to pay £3,500 to the Home Office to bring staff from overseas. These staff will be doing work for the NHS or the public sector whilst they're employed by me. Is that fair?
So it's an excellent question, because some of the challenges that you're seeing in social care are being felt across the economy, and many of you will run small businesses. And what's the #1 challenge other than energy costs? It's getting access to workers and getting people to actually work. And I strongly believe that part of the answer to this problem is being much tougher on our welfare system to get people off benefits and into work. Now, I'll tell you this, right now, there are more people claiming unemployment benefit than there are job vacancies in the economy. I mean, just think about that for a second. And that's happening under a Conservative government. That's clearly not right. Something's gone wrong. Now, I think there are one or two very specific things we can do to change. Now, actually, your idea is similar to one that I'm going to put in place. Right now, if you're on unemployment benefit and you work just 9 hours on the national living wage, at that point, you don't have to check in as much with your job coach at the job centre. You don't have to take the extra hours that may be on offer or an extra job, and you can keep your benefits. Nothing happens to you. I don't think that's right? Because ultimately it's your taxes and someone who's working very hard's taxes that are paying for that. And if there are hours to do, if there's a job going, people should have to take the job, as opposed to just being able to stay on benefits. And that's the change that I want to bring, because I do think that is the right thing. It's the Conservative thing. Those are our values. We believe in working hard, right? And we want to support people off welfare into work because it's good for them and their families too, because there's dignity in work. I passionately believe that. And it's fair for taxpayers, and it's good for the economy because it will ease inflation. So it's something I want to be very robust on and quickly, because it's the right thing to do. But as long as we're doing that, and as long as we're being tough on illegal migration, which I talked about in my speech, which we must do, and I will do, then I think it's right that we are pragmatic about migration for those sectors of our economy that need support. So whether that may well be in agriculture or social care, where we have, as you know, put social care workers on the immigration shortage list, I think it's perfectly reasonable to be pragmatic, because Brexit for me, and I voted for Brexit proudly, was about having control over our borders. Not saying that no one should ever come here, but making sure that everyone who did come here comes here for a reason that we decided. That's what sovereignty means, and that's the kind of country and immigration system and welfare system that I want to deliver as Prime Minister.
The gentleman next to the gentleman who's holding up a handkerchief, a middle row.
Hi, Edmund Chen. UNSDI, SDI under the United Nations. I'm from Hong Kong. Hi, welcome here, and thanks for being here. Nowadays, I believe that Putin is not quite strong as some half year ago. We all believe that. But our greatest threat maybe still Beijing. Xi Jinping got 65% getting away in October, end October, if you believe me. And regardless of that, there are something called transcendental warfare. I don't know whether we are all ready for that, including...
Question, sir, please.
Yep, including the war now, including Hong Kong, and including the Taiwan technology, semiconductor. Are we ready to counter Beijing?
Yes. Well, look, sir, I agree with you, and I've said so previously, that China represents, and the Chinese Communist Party represent, the greatest threat to our economic security and indeed our national security. That's something that the head of MI5 and the FBI also affirmed in a recent speech that they jointly gave. And you're right as well, that that threat manifests itself in lots of different ways, and in new ways to those that we were used to dealing with in the past. So, well, how do we deal with it? I think there are a number of things that I will leave with you. First of all, you mentioned investment, and that's right. Now, it's a great strength of our economy that we are open to international investment, and it has driven jobs, growth and productivity, which you all know here in Northern Ireland. But it's also right that we are able to protect ourselves against hostile investment that seeks to steal our technology, infiltrate our companies. And that's why, as Chancellor, I was proud to pass a new law, the National Security Investment Act, which gives us new powers to stop that type of hostile investment from happening. As Prime Minister, I would absolutely use the powers in that bill to keep us all safe. But we need to do a few other things. We need to always stand up for our values, particularly with regard to Hong Kong, as you said. And that's why I talked about our country's proud, compassionate history and welcoming people here fleeing persecution. And I want us to always be able to do that as we did in Hong Kong, where that means being in control of illegal migration so people have trust in the system. It means being an active security presence in the region, and our aircraft carrier recently was there. and in partnership with the Australians and the Americans, we have a new defence partnership. And lastly, we need to be thinking about the strategic threats that face us in years and decades to come. We'll all be driving electric vehicles probably one day. That will be wonderful on many levels, but it won't be wonderful if all the rare earth minerals that power the electric batteries all come from China, will it? So we need to be thinking right now, as I was as Chancellor, working with my counterparts in Australia, America and Canada, to build a supply chain of those critical minerals which is not reliant on China, and we don't leave that too late. So those are all the ingredients that go into countering the threat. But let me just close on this, because it's a broader question about defence spending. Now look, I was the Chancellor who, together with the Defence Secretary and Prime Minister, put in place the largest uplift in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. And we did that in the middle of the pandemic. We singled them out for special treatment because the threats our country facing were increasing, and we wanted to make sure that the MOD was resourced appropriately for those. Now, if Liz was here, well, when was Liz here? I don't know if you asked her, but she would say that she's going to commit to 3% of GDP on defence spending. I'm not going to do that. Right? Defence spending is going to increase. Of course it is, and it will continue to do so. But I don't believe in arbitrary targets when it comes to something as important as security of our realm. So I'll make a different commitment to you, that I will invest whatever it takes to keep you, your families, and our country safe, because that's the first duty of a Prime Minister, and it's certainly the first duty of a Conservative and Unionist Prime Minister.
Can we go front row, this gentleman here, the microphone is on its way.
Hi Rishi, Adrian Houston from East Belfast. This country has some excellent anti-slavery legislation and is against the use of child labour. And you mentioned the rare earth metals. My concern is that with the government's obsession with net zero and trying to push us all into electric cars, what can you do to ensure that child labour is not being used in Africa, China, etc., to mine the precious metals that are necessary to create the electric cars we're supposed to buy?
Yeah. Well, it's an excellent question, and it's probably something that you're more familiar with than I am. And my understanding is there are a bunch of international conventions that we are a party to that govern the use of child labour in supply chains, not just for mining, but in all sorts of other things. But I'll happily go and look at that, because if there's a particular exposure in the mining side for rare earth minerals that is not as well covered as, for example, clothing supply chains, which we did a lot of work on over the past 20 years, I'd happily go and take a look at that, because ultimately that's something that we all care deeply about, and all of us share those values. But if I may, you mentioned a slight point about net zero, which I should address. Now, look, I believe in net zero, right? I have two young girls, and they're 9 and 11, and for the past couple of years, they have not really been bothered at all about the job I've had, with one exception, is that they say to me, Daddy, what are you doing about the environment, right? And this big important job you have, that's the only thing they care about. So look, I do think it's important, and in the same way that you heard me talk passionately about the public finances and what we leave our kids and our grandkids, I think as Conservatives we care about inheritance in all its guises, and part of our inheritance that we leave the next generation is the environment. So I think it's right that we care about it, but you're also right, we need to do it in a way that's pragmatic and that brings people along with us. So my answer to doing that is simple. It's about innovation, because if we're going to get there in a way that means we're not all just giving everything up that we love doing, that our bills are not endlessly increasing, we need innovation. We need British scientists and researchers and companies to create the products of the future that will help provide clean, reliable, affordable, secure energy for us all to use. And that is happening, right? Hydrogen buses, as I said, on the streets, just here in Northern Ireland. That's fantastic. It's a glimpse of what is possible. And we need to do that across the board in solar and new nuclear reactors and offshore wind, you name it. And I'm confident we can do it. Why? Because I know how to build an innovation economy. That's what my business background has been in. That's when I spent time in California. I know all the ingredients it takes to build an economy that will put innovation at its heart. Because not only do we need to do that to solve net zero, we also need to do that to create jobs and prosperity for every part of our United Kingdom, because that's what modern economies are built on. If you want to drive growth in a modern economy, yes, tax is important, and we can talk about it, and we should, but that is only a bit of the story. in this day and age, if you do not have an economy that is the most innovative in the world, we will not be able to be one of the fastest growing economies in the world. And that is the economy that I know how to build for all of you here in Northern Ireland and the United Kingdom. And that's how we're going to do net zero in a positive way. And that's how we're going to spread jobs and opportunity around our country.
So I'm going to go to the gentleman on the end of the row there next.
Hi, Tiernan Scott, South Belfast. I just want to ask, what are you going to do for those who are not protected by an energy price cap, whether it be a small business, a pharmacy, a school, a care home? They're not protected by a price cap. What are you going to do for them now when their prices and their bills are skyrocketing?
Yeah, so look, well, part of the reason is that it gets passed through. So part of the reason inflation that all of us are seeing is, as of this morning, 10%, is because businesses largely pass on prices through. That's how a market economy works, and the most effective thing for us to do is to help people. Now look, I think there are some major reforms we need to make to the energy market, right? Now, I'll give you one example again, without getting into the detail, that will reduce wholesale costs for business, all the people you mentioned, and that's in the electricity market. Right now, the price that we pay for electricity, and all those people you mentioned pay for electricity, is too high. It's artificially inflated. Why? Because think about it. If we get electricity from an offshore wind turbine, right? Did anything change in the last year about the cost for that particular business? No, nothing changed. Costs the same to produce the offshore wind this year as it did last year. But the price we're paying for that electricity has quadrupled because we have to pay the price of natural gas. Right? That's how our market works. It looks at who's got the highest price, and right now, because of a war, it's natural gas, and then we have to pay everyone else that price. That's not right. And we need to reform our market to break that link. And if we can do that, it will significantly lower wholesale electricity prices for all of the people that you spoke about and all of us. That's a reform that we are behind on. Europe has already moved ahead of that, and I want to get on as Prime Minister and crack on and deliver that. But I will take this other point, if you don't mind, about people, because this is really important. It's the most important issue facing our country in the short term, is how are we going to get through this winter? I think millions of people are at risk of a very tough time. And I've been very clear that my plan is to support them. Now, I believe we have to support vulnerable groups, those on low incomes and pensioners directly with financial support. Because a tax cut does not work for those people. So if Liz's plan is to say, well, I believe in tax cuts, not direct support, I don't think that's right. Because her tax cut for someone on her salary means £1,700 of help. For someone working really hard on the national living wage in the care sector that we talk about, or indeed you did, that tax cut is worth about £1 a week. For a pensioner who's not working, that tax cut is worth precisely zero, right? So that's not a plan that I think is right for our country. If we don't directly help those vulnerable groups, those people on the lowest incomes, those people, pensioners, then it will be a moral failure of the Conservative government. And I don't think the British people will forgive us for that. And that's not something that I would ever do as Prime Minister, because it's the wrong thing to do.
Okay. So we're going to go to the lady here with her hand up.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Jane Doherty from Armagh, a relatively new member.
Welcome, Jane.
I just want to ask you, hear your answer to a question that was asked to Liz Truss, was very much on the minds of people of Northern Ireland, is the constant impasse in government, and government not sitting in Northern Ireland, or as we call it in our house, strategic huffing. And all these great policies that you've mentioned can't really be put in place effectively if we do not have our government sitting. So I want to know what specific actions, measures or laws you are going to put in place if you become Prime Minister so that this does not go on. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, look, I think on this there's probably not an enormous amount of disagreement between me and Liz on this question. I think all of us want to see institutions back up and running, right? That's the right thing for the people of Northern Ireland. And when we think about how far we've come, right? 25 years next year, right, of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. And for this not to be functioning is sad, right? It's not what any of us wanted. It's not what should be happening. And I think there's so much promise. There was a festival just a few months ago that I was reading about, the Four Corners Festival, that brought people from communities together with words from not just the Pope, but also the Archbishop of Canterbury. You can't imagine that happening 25 years ago. So look, there's so much progress that has been made, and we need to make sure that we fix this so that we can continue moving into the future. So look, that starts with fixing the protocol, right? And it also starts with talking to all parties and making sure that we can try and resolve differences and bring people together. That's what I would do as Prime Minister. I'm sure it's what Liz would do as well. Both of us are committed to passing the bill that is in Parliament. But look, you know as well as I do, that bill will take time. Right? That bill will take time to pass. So in the interim, of course, as a new Prime Minister, I would seek to talk to Europe and Ireland and the French to see if we can find a negotiated outcome. I've got a track record in doing that. I have good relationships with all my counterparts across the board, because a negotiated outcome, if it's there, and history shows us that even when Europe say they're not open to changing anything, they have. Because if that negotiated outcome is there, it will be far quicker than waiting for the bill to pass. So it's worth at least trying, but be in no doubt about my resolve to fix the situation with the protocol, which I think will unlock the power sharing and bring people back together. Because like all of you, it's right that your institutions are the ones that are taking decisions on your behalf, but especially with the challenges that are mounting up, whether it's with your next-door neighbour's question about the NHS at the beginning, or social care, or the energy crisis. It's right that we have people here taking decisions for the people of Northern Ireland. That's what you deserve, and that's what I will do my best to deliver.
Sadly, that's all we have time for.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Thanks very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for attending. I hope those of you who haven't already voted, it's given you some food for thought. Can I reiterate the words of Peter Booth at the start of the meeting? Can you please ensure that you vote ideally online, but if you're voting by post, you get in the post as soon as possible. We are, of course, expecting a Royal Mail strike. So thank you very much for attending. It's been lovely to see you all.